The Nintendo Switch, in a weird way, has meant a lot to me. From its first reveal in 2016 to now, over 8 years later, with its successor knocking on the door, somehow this console has managed to become an increasingly important part of my life. And before I say goodbye to the Nintendo Switch era and everything this console meant to me, I wanted to take one last look back at the entire life of Nintendo Switch. The highs and lows, the biggest games and announcements, the Nintendo Directs, the weird, unexplainable announcements, just what it felt like to be a Nintendo fan through this system's entire life. So pull up a chair next to the green screen fire, pour yourself a glass of Mountain Dew, and listen to the tale of how Nintendo Switch changed the world. Or, had some good games at least. To me, this story starts in October of 2016. After over a year of speculation and rumors about the secret new Nintendo console codenamed NX, Nintendo finally dropped the reveal trailer for the new system titled Nintendo Switch. This was our first look at the hybrid home console / handheld nature of the Switch, and it was incredibly exciting. It feels commonplace now, but at the time, this was pretty groundbreaking. It almost felt to me like a continuation of what they were trying to do with the Wii U when they gave you this gamepad controller that you could walk around the house with, but now there were no more half steps to be taken. This was a full-on, handheld home console experience. And I can remember vividly my first time watching this trailer because I felt so many times when I was a kid, I was sitting in the back seat of my parents' car like, man, I wish I could play my Wii in the car. Then I see this trailer with a person bringing this thing onto the airplane and into a car, and I went, holy shit, Wii in the car! It actually felt like a childhood dream coming true for me. And even though I had always been a Nintendo fan, this was the exact moment it started to become something more. And clearly, I wasn't alone in that excitement, because this became their most viewed YouTube video of all time and was #1 on trending for over a day, which is pretty crazy considering where Nintendo was as a company at this point. But after struggling for the entirety of the Wii U generation, suddenly Nintendo had captured people's excitement again. That trailer also gave us just a glimpse of a new Mario Kart and 3D Mario game, but we'd have to wait a little while longer to find out anything else. That day would come in early 2017 though, with the January Nintendo Switch presentation. And this whole presentation is a fond memory for me because it feels like the last time Nintendo really went all out with a live, on-stage demo of anything. It started with some pretty boring hardware details, but still managed to have people glued to the screen. They showed off the Joy-Cons for the first time, like how you could tell how many ice cubes were inside the Joy-Con using HD Rumble, which was genuinely impressive, but in terms of video games, cool, I guess. That segued into reveals for 1-2 Switch and ARMS, which were the most tech demo-y of games they had to show, and then they led into the big reveal of Splatoon 2. This was Nintendo's newest successful IP at the time, so it made sense to try and get this on the Switch as early as possible, although it didn't feel that long since Splatoon 1 had come out. Then there was the Mario Odyssey reveal, which was one of the highlights of this presentation. Super exciting moment where they do this fake out as they show the cityscape. You're wondering what kind of game this could possibly be. And then Mario jumps out of the sewer. That was huge, and the games just kept on coming with Xenoblade 2, Fire Emblem Warriors, Project Octopath Traveler, which was later creatively renamed to Octopath Traveler. It felt like Nintendo was not pulling any punches here. They had a lot to show, and everything was going relatively smoothly. Like, for a live presentation, I think this actually did a pretty good job of avoiding the hiccups and awkward moments that kinda caused companies to stop doing this these days. Although if there was one big complaint I remember hearing about, it's that the live translation didn't go that well. And also, I actually kinda liked this, but they really felt the need to make every single transition start with, let's switch to this.
Let's switch to this person. Yay! Oh, that didn't go very well.
But no amount of awkward was ever gonna distract from the pure excitement here. They showed off something that actually felt unique, but still had a little bit of that classic Nintendo charm as well. And equally as important, the games looked good. It felt like they had overhauled their marketing a little bit in a way that was really needed for a long time, and all the trailers felt bigger and better and more exciting. None more than the grand finale with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I still think this is the greatest video game trailer of all time. That's the most I can say. I mean, seeing the Guardians overrun this town on fire, the sweeping landscapes, the giant creatures we knew nothing about back then, hearing the voice acting for the first time as Zelda sobs into Link's arms, this trailer established Breath of the Wild as not just the next Zelda game, but something grander than we'd ever experienced before. And now, the hype was unparalleled. People started lining up a month in advance to get this thing. I remember watching this series of vlogs, waiting outside the Nintendo New York store for a month, and just getting to feel that collective excitement and bask in that for a while. That honestly felt like such a special time to be a Nintendo fan. And on March 3rd, 2017, the day finally came. I knew I had to get this thing, but I had missed the boat on pre-orders, so somehow we managed to track down the very last unclaimed system in my entire region, and my mom went to pick it up for me because I was still in high school. Thanks, Mom. But thanks to that, Nintendo Switch became the first and only console I've ever bought on release day, and I was already hooked. But if there was any doubt that this was gonna be an amazing system for me, that was immediately squashed by the fact that they just so happened to release my favorite game of all time on the same day. There is so much I could say about Breath of the Wild, and a lot that I already have, but I won't go into all of that here. Just know, I think this game is incredible. It was the first game released on Switch, and is still talked about today at the system's very end. It left an undeniable impact on open world games, Zelda games, video games in general. I think this will forever go down as one of the all-time greats. And it's kind of funny to think that this game also released on Wii U, but being that big launch day title, I think this game is forever tied to the Nintendo Switch's identity. It was the perfect way to introduce the Switch to the world and get the wider gaming landscape to start paying attention. Speaking of groundbreaking though, 1-2 Switch costs $50. This is a minigame collection that probably should have been packed in with the Switch for free. It's kind of a neat way of showcasing the tech that they packed into the Joy-Cons, but really it's nothing more than a tech demo. The minigame I heard talked about the most is this one where you shake the Joy-Con around to feel how many marbles are inside of it, and that is kinda cool, but hardly a game. So when that's the biggest game you got, I don't know what to tell you, man. That's not really a game. There was also like the Cowboy Quick Draw game, which the one time I played that was on Halloween while I was dressed as a cowboy. And if nothing else, Nintendo can rest easy knowing that somebody out there played it like the people in the trailer. But it seems to me like the general consensus with this game is that it's fun once or twice, but not really worth buying. One of the biggest Nintendo headlines at the time, though, was that people were licking their Switch cartridges. Apparently, Nintendo had put some bitter coating on all of their cartridges to keep small children and animals from eating them, and that just made everyone else start putting them in their mouths. But honestly, thinking about all this now, I realized I've never actually tasted a Nintendo Switch cartridge, so today I'm gonna be trying Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Pairs better with white. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe plays better than it tastes. The biggest addition here compared to regular Mario Kart 8 was the revamped battle mode where we actually had a real battle mode. But this is a phenomenal game. It's got an incredible soundtrack, delicious visuals. It's Mario Kart, and maybe the best one. This game also included all the DLC from the Wii U version, and would go on to years later get even more DLC in an unprecedented extra deluxening of the Deluxe game. But even without that, this is just a solid, all-around great time. Everybody likes Mario Kart, and this sold an insane amount of copies, still #1 on the Switch bestsellers list, because everyone likes Mario Kart. Moving into summer of 2017, though, we saw the release of Nintendo's first new IP on the Switch, ARMS, and I think this is a funny little game. Nintendo was pushing playing it with the thumbs-up grip, which kinda made it feel like they're still just trying to show off how cool the Joy-Cons are and how much unique stuff you can do with them. But I mean, this was the best way to play that game. It was a fun idea, a little boxing type of game with extendable arms, and I had a good time with it, but it did feel like they struggled to balance how competitive versus casual they wanted this game to be. Like, they seemed to be pushing this as the next big competitive thing, but also as a silly, goofy little showcase of what the Joy-Cons can do, and it just never really stuck with anyone. I still think this is not a bad game, but it unfortunately just didn't leave a huge mark. A game that did leave a mark that summer, though, was Splatoon 2. I mean, Splatoon had already had a big impact on Wii U, which is incredible to leave any kind of impact on that small of a system. But it made sense for Nintendo to try and get it off of there as quickly as possible and get it to a larger install base, and they succeeded with Splatoon 2. I don't know if it felt like some massive upgrade over the first one to me, but it was still a good game. There was enough to define it as its own sequel, and considering we were just a few months into the Switch generation and didn't have a ton else to play, this was the game that defined summer of 2017 for Nintendo Switch. At least I'd say that was the defining game, but maybe the defining moment comes from E3 2017. This is, to this day, my favorite E3 presentation I've ever seen. There were just so many good reveals. They got Kirby, they got Yoshi, they got Fire Emblem Warriors, Breath of the Wild DLC. We saw Xenoblade 2, which I'll just tell you right now, I did not play this game, but I think it looks really good. And also, they didn't show us anything for this, but they finally confirmed that mainline Pokemon games would be coming to the Switch. And I'll be honest, this reveal kind of feels like they're being held at gunpoint, but this was still one of the most exciting announcements for me. I mean, at the time, there had never been a mainline Pokemon game on a home console. It was a dedicated handheld series, but now with this hybrid nature of the Switch, it felt like the perfect opportunity to make that leap. And honestly, I think this is part of the reason the Switch was so successful. It gave you the perfect loophole to make your previously handheld-only series on home console. You could put them up on your TV for the first time. And back in 2017, that was a huge selling point to me. After that, though, we got one of the biggest E3 reactions ever with the reveal of Metroid Prime 4. This was absolutely huge. Whether you were a Metroid fan or not, you'd probably heard about Metroid Prime 4 because of how much people were demanding it. And having this game, after being so highly requested for so long, finally being revealed here in the first year of Nintendo Switch, it felt like it brought this brand new hope to the Switch generation. Like any previously forgotten or long requested series could finally be coming back, and seeing the celebration over this announcement, it was just a special moment. A special moment made even better when the game actually released. But Nintendo wasn't done yet. We saw that Breath of the Wild DLC, we got Rocket League on Switch, where we found out you can wear a Mario hat.
This changes the game.
And finally, we saw Mario Odyssey, and this was a perfect trailer. They once again went with the fake out, this time opening on a grassy field with a dinosaur, making me think this is Monster Hunter or something, and then they zoom in on the Mario hat, and Mario is the fucking dinosaur? This was the reveal of the new capture mechanic where you could just become any enemy in the game, and that was such a fun and unexpected idea. And in this trailer too, we got to hear Jump Up Superstar for the first time, which has become iconic at this point. And finally, it ended with a release date that was just a few months away. This moment was perfect. The trailer had absolutely everything it needed to make us excited for the next Mario game. What the fuck? Yeah, first we saw the release of Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, this funny little Ubisoft collaboration that actually turned out to be a really impressively made strategy game. Such an absolutely weird and stupid collaboration to do, but the game is beautiful. There's some genuinely good strategy gameplay here. It looks and sounds amazing. It's so colorful and vibrant. Clearly, this was a passionate, dedicated team that had a weird idea, and they made it work. And you know what? I'm just gonna say it. I still think the Rabbids are kind of funny. They might be the minions of the video game world, but there's some actually clever jokes in here. It might be one of the strangest releases in the entire Switch library, but it was so nice to see this team take a ridiculous idea and pretty much knock it out of the park. But obviously, there was another Mario game that people were looking forward to right now. And come October, we saw the release of Super Mario Odyssey. And this game is so good, it's like Mario Odyssey meets Mario Odyssey. The music is phenomenal, it looks so good, and most importantly, it feels so great to play. There's just so many options for movement and they all feel so satisfying. It feels like it opens up this world of possibilities that you can accomplish anything in any number of ways. And even if it's something you weren't intended to do, there's always a reward for you. This was a return to a more open sandbox style of Mario that many people had been asking for a long time, and it proved to be super successful. It was just a fun, good vibes, whimsical type of game that continued to establish Nintendo Switch as something special. And I mean, it's crazy that at this point, we got big, new, exciting 3D Mario and Zelda games in just the Switch's first year. It felt like forever since both of those series had major releases within a few months of each other. And that's not to say that the Wii U didn't have some great games, but something about these two games in particular just felt bigger. They were bigger in scope, they felt different and exciting. Maybe there's some better marketing that went on too, and of course just the fact that they're on a new exciting system. But these two games in particular made 2017 a year to remember. Now with both hardware and software, it felt like Nintendo had tapped into some magic well that made everything feel bigger and more eye-catching. Throughout 2017, Nintendo had hit their stride, and the release of Mario Odyssey is when it felt like it was safe to say, Nintendo is back. Of course, carrying this momentum into 2018, you'd expect Nintendo to stay the course, keep putting out big new entries in beloved series. Mario Odyssey could get some DLC, maybe we revive an old series like Star Fox or F-Zero, maybe we make a game out of cardboard. Yeah, let's do the last one. Yep, in January of 2018, Nintendo announced Nintendo Labo, a series of games designed around building your own immersive experiences out of cardboard. As weird as this is, I do think it's a pretty cool idea. It's definitely targeted more at kids, but giving those kids something they can physically build with their hands and then play with, it kinda taps into that Lego toy type of fun, and the Game Builder Garage Labo especially is a pretty neat way of teaching kids about programming and game design in a little bit more of an accessible way. Or at least in a more fun way, because the idea of building all this stuff and then having that cardboard just laying around forever kinda stresses me out personally. But thankfully, Nintendo was still releasing stuff for us full-grown adults. Like Kirby. Kirby Star Allies released in March of this year and was a little bit underwhelming. The biggest addition here was the ally mechanic, which lets you basically befriend some of your enemies and combine your abilities. It's a little bit reminiscent of the capture mechanic in Mario Odyssey. Just imagine if instead of becoming the enemy, the computer does it for you and nothing that interesting happens. Combining abilities was pretty cool, but it never went much further than use the fire sword to melt the ice. I will say the game is a lot more fun in co-op when you actually have a friend there instead of the computer, but still, this was kind of just a nothing entry in the Kirby series that did not take much of a step forward at all. I mean, the fact you could wander around the overworld wherever you want was pretty neat, but that just left us wishing for an actual full 3D Kirby, which this was not. I still had a good time here, but it was a little disappointing. Star Allies was at the center of a big DLC debate at the time, though, where a lot of people argued this game was basically unfinished when it was released, and then finished over time through free DLC updates. People felt that way about a lot of games in this era, and personally, it never bothered me as much as some people. I don't think it's totally fair to say this game was unfinished, but I do think the continuous DLC releases weren't a great fit for this game. Like, this is not a competitive multiplayer game where you're adding in new characters and stages. This is a game where you basically just blast through the story, and that's it. After beating the game one time, I had no motivation to go back to it. And by the time all these free DLC updates were added, I just wasn't excited about it anymore. This is all stuff that would have been great to have on my first playthrough. But by the time it was put in here, I don't think anybody really cared. I guess the game got better over time, and I had fun when I played it with friends, but no reason to go back to this now. Also around this time was the first full-fledged Nintendo Direct of the year, and easily the highlight here was the reveal of the next Super Smash Bros. Honestly, most of this Direct was about games that we already knew about, but none of that really mattered because all anyone needed to talk about was Smash. Another iconic reveal trailer here, and I have to say this because I had no one to tell at the time, but watching this trailer and seeing the Inklings swimming around and fighting each other, I knew this had to be a Smash reveal. They'd already shown Splatoon. This had to be Inkling in Smash, and I was so hyped to be right. One of the most memorable moments of the year, this shot right here, and really this defined the Nintendo discourse for the rest of 2018. Everyone was making predictions about new characters, speculating about new modes, and when the reveals started coming, this game may have had the most hype build-up to release of any game in the entire Switch generation. But we still had most of the year to wait. And in the meantime, tennis, I guess. Mario Tennis Aces was actually my most played game of 2018, at least up until the Smash release. I think it's got really fun, strategic gameplay where you've got to choose the right type of shot at the right angle to basically try to outsmart your opponent as much as you're outplaying them. And I found that super satisfying. It's one of the few games where I really feel like I could actively see myself getting better with every game. It was also nice to see them bring back an adventure mode, which is something fans of the series had been asking for a long time, and even though I don't think they went all the way with this mode, I still think this was a really encouraging trend to see from Nintendo at the time, that in a lot of their games, they were actually listening to fans. After being so insistent on doing things their own way for so long, it felt like the beginning of the Switch generation was the first time Nintendo was open to just doing what the audience wanted. But in the build-up to E3 2018, tennis was not enough. We saw how crazy E3 2017 was, and we had all kinds of hopes for what E3 2018 could hold. Everyone was speculating about Smash, and on top of that, a rumor that Star Fox would be returning in a new racing game quietly started to surface. And this turned out to be a Ubisoft game instead. Clearly, someone had seen footage of Star Fox in Ubisoft's Starlink Battle for Atlas and assumed this was a new Nintendo game coming, but soon after, Ubisoft revealed the Star Fox cameo in Starlink, and still the rumor took a while to die, but eventually people realized we'd been fooled by Ubisoft again. Still though, we were ready for Nintendo's E3 2018 Direct, and this one had a hard time living up to 2017, but it was solid. The new Mario Party reveal was exciting, Reggie showed up.
I can't wait to drop off the battle bus and meet some of you on the battlefield in Fortnite.
But once again, everything paled in comparison to Smash. This was all anyone was talking about, and for good reason, because this Everyone Is Here trailer was so good. As much as people were speculating, somehow nobody thought that they would just bring back literally everyone in Smash history. And the fact we were getting even more on top of that was insane. Ridley was in Smash now, he wasn't too big anymore, all bets were off, anybody could be in Smash, and the character hype and predictions were off the charts. And this carried us straight into a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate exclusive direct just 2 months later in August. Here we got even more character reveals with Simon, Richter, Dark Samus, Chrom, King K. Rool, who's probably my favorite newcomer and might have the best newcomer trailer too. And all in all, this is probably the best game-specific direct that I've ever seen. They knew we were here for new characters, and they delivered. And on top of that, we saw for the first time the insane amount of stages and music included in the game, and at the very end, we saw a look at the main menu, which had a suspiciously blurred out mode in the bottom corner that had everybody speculating once again, but we'd have to wait a little bit longer to find out about that. Just one more month went by though, and we got another full-on Nintendo Direct. This one had a Luigi's Mansion 3 reveal, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, or Nsumbadux for short. We got a bunch of info on Nintendo Switch Online, which was launching just 5 days later, and that had mixed reception, I guess. But then they ended things off with Isabelle coming to Super Smash Bros., and that transitioned straight into the reveal of a brand new Animal Crossing game. In terms of games releasing right now though, the big one was Super Mario Party. I gotta say though, this game came out at the perfect time for me because it was my first semester of college, and it birthed the time-honored tradition in my friend group of the Mario Party drinking game. I also think this game continued the trend of Nintendo actually listening to fans because they decided to ditch the car mechanic that was in Mario Party 9 and 10, and I don't want to say was bad, but was pretty bad. Now we actually went back to the traditional Mario Party that fans had been asking for. The weird thing about this game though was that you were forced to play with just one Joy-Con, and I do think that was a little annoying at the time, but looking back now, it does at least give this game a little bit of a unique flavor, and all the mini-games were designed pretty well around it. Also, a new feature I never got to try was Toad's Rec Room, where you connect 2 switches and play games across both screens, and I thought that looked pretty cool, but I never got to try it because how often are you in a room with 2 switches and go, let's play Toad's Rec Room? But November rolled around and brought us yet another Smash Direct, and this one showed us the last few characters in the base game, with Ken, Incineroar, and Piranha Plant to come soon after launch, and they told us that there would be DLC adding even more fighters over the next couple of years. Then we found out that the mysterious mode from last time was World of Light, essentially this game's story mode revolving around the spirits of characters who didn't make it into Smash, and I thought this was a cool way to include a lot more characters, although I think spirits didn't really stick the way that they hoped. Soon after that though, we got Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the first Pokemon games to release on Nintendo Switch. These were remakes of the first generation of Pokemon games using Pokemon Go catching mechanics, and that is a clever way of kind of bridging the gap between Pokemon Go and the mainline games, trying to get some people from the app to transition over into mainline Pokemon. Although I'm starting to wonder, did that really work? Like, was there anyone who played Pokemon Go but drew the line at games where you can't physically throw the ball? If anything, I think this control scheme is more confusing for anyone whose first video game wasn't ARMS. At least the Switch got its first Pokemon games in time for the holiday season though, and soon after, it was finally time for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And not to be cliche, but this game really was the ultimate Super Smash Bros. It had a ridiculous amount of characters and stages. World of Light was very fun, although it's no Subspace Emissary, but it's better than what we got on Wii U and 3DS. And now, this is my most played game of all time, and most of that's because it's just the perfect thing to throw on Anytime you're hanging out with the boys, it's such a classic go-to that never gets old, and there's so much variety with the different characters and stages and modes. Every time playing feels a little bit different, but the core gameplay always stays just as good. I also really love what they did, forcing you to start with just the original 8 characters and unlocking characters as you go. Each time you see that new challenger screen was always so exciting, and with how many characters there are in this game, that lasted for a very long time. And playing this game on release day at midnight with all of my friends, that's a treasured memory to this day. That was the end of 2018 though, and the next big piece of Nintendo news came in February with the next Nintendo Direct. This one wasn't the craziest of directs in this generation, but it opened with Mario Maker 2 coming to Switch. We got Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 Black Order, which looked terrible. Dragon Quest XI got a good showcase. Tetris 99 was revealed, which is a battle royale Tetris game that I don't think anybody had asked for, but actually worked surprisingly well. And the finale was this beautiful trailer for a remake of Link's Awakening. The next game to release was Yoshi's Crafted World, which, if you remember, was revealed at E3 2017, and they even showed a lot of gameplay back then, but somehow this got delayed into 2019, and I swear this was supposed to be something more, but they just had to scrap it and change everything. Because in that E3 trailer, they pushed so hard this flip side mechanic that seemed like it was supposed to be some game-breaking new innovation, and it ends up just letting you play the level in reverse. I enjoyed the game, but I could never shake the feeling that there was supposed to be something more here. And as a certified Yoshi player in every game that I play, I'm a little bit sad and disappointed that this game didn't do all that well, and it seems like Nintendo hasn't been interested in continuing the series since then. Not too much going on in the first half of 2019 though, and when E3 2019 came around, it was pretty good, although there were some weird spotlights they gave to games like this Dark Crystal game and Empire of Sin, I guess. Still some cool reveals though. We got Hero in Smash. Cadence of Hyrule was a crazy collab with the developers of Crypt of the Necro Dancer, and seeing Nintendo just give up one of their most treasured IPs to an indie developer was a really cool thing to see, and I hope they do it more. Then we got a deeper dive into the new Animal Crossing game that was coming. Banjo-Kazooie got revealed in Smash, and it ended off with a teaser for the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Another incredible Zelda trailer here, and it looked like this game was headed in a darker direction, which is always really interesting and exciting when Nintendo's willing to touch anything creepy. So the Zelda fans were excited, the theories were getting going again, and in the meantime, we got Super Mario Maker 2. This came out shortly after E3 that summer, but unfortunately, it did not capture the same craze as Mario Maker 1. Still, this is a great thing to have on the console though. It's basically infinite Mario levels, and on top of that they added a story mode this time, with a full set of Nintendo-made levels, so this basically doubles as its own 2D Mario game, on top of a whole level creator. Another game that got a lot of promotion around this time though, was Fire Emblem Three Houses. And with all those trailers, they got me. This was my first Fire Emblem game, and even though I don't normally play games this long, I really got into it. I liked the story and the characters more than anything. The strategy gameplay was very fun, and even though I did end up having to set it down and pick it up a year later, I did finally come back and finish it. I do think a problem that a lot of these types of games have is that it's difficult to write an NPC who you can interact with an infinite amount of times and have their personality not just come across as one personality trait. You know, like the muscle guy, the popular girl, the shy girl. I just think that's a trap that a lot of RPGs tend to fall into. And I think Fire Emblem does that to a degree, but still it's a fairly well-written game, and even if I thought some of the characters were a little bit one-note, somehow they were the most likable people in the world anyway. I kept coming back, I kept wanting to talk to them, and they did develop more as the game progressed. There were some characters that I thought could have been a little bit better, but nonetheless, I got connected to them, and I really enjoyed the game. Also during this summer, people were talking about potential hardware revisions for the Nintendo Switch. And somewhat surprisingly, instead of releasing the more powerful Switch Pro, Nintendo opted to release a cheaper Switch Lite. This was a smaller, handheld-only Switch that retailed at $200, and it definitely felt targeted at kids as a cheaper, less breakable option, and in hindsight, as much as people wanted the Switch Pro, I feel like we should have all seen this coming. It was really just the hardcore fans that were the ones writing the articles and making the videos talking about a potential Switch Pro, but making something cheaper, more accessible, and more kid-friendly probably was the better business move for Nintendo. I mean, now Nintendo is trying to push the idea of multiple Switches in one household. Buy a Switch for yourself and 2 Switch Lites for your kids. Why the hell not? What else were you gonna do with your family? Talk to them? The most surprising thing about this release, though, was that there were no detachable Joy-Cons. They were baked right into the system. And while that does make it a little simpler and less likely to be broken, so much of the Switch's identity up until this point had been based around the Joy-Con. The idea that you could detach them, pass one to your friend, and play any game, anytime, anywhere. Nintendo had pushed that so hard. So to just completely abandon that with the Switch Lite felt pretty strange. But I guess they decided that sending that somewhat contradictory message was okay because Switch Lite make money. And overall, I think most people agree that this is a pretty good, cheaper option to have, so it's not like anybody was mad about it. But if you want a good example of how ravenous Nintendo fans were during this generation, how crazy the speculation for new games became, look no further than this image of Mario eating a watermelon. This was a promotional image tweeted out by Nintendo on August 22nd, 2019, and that's all it ever needed to be. But some fans noticed that this seemed like a new render of Mario. Surely they wouldn't just make a whole new render for a promotional image. This must be from an upcoming game. And if you look at the tropical shirt and the fact he's eating a watermelon on the beach, Mario Sunshine 2 confirmed! And that absolutely never happened. But hey, a fan can dream, I guess. That's how it was being a fan sometimes, though. People would speculate over anything and everything, but it was kinda funny. The next big game to come out this year was that Link's Awakening remake, and I think this is an awesome game. It's got maybe the best story in Zelda history, and playing through it for the first time here, I did feel like it still had a little bit of that Game Boy jank, but it's a really good game. I love the soundtrack and the art style. I know the toy-like art style that they gave this has been pretty controversial for Nintendo, especially because they've done it multiple times now, but I think at least in this case, it worked pretty well. Also this fall, a game that does not have the name recognition of Link's Awakening, but somehow did way better, was Ring Fit Adventure. I don't know how this game did so well, but every once in a while Nintendo throws out an oddball left field idea, and it just works. I guess it just really clicked with that casual market looking for a healthy exercise type game, and even though I didn't use this myself, I really do love seeing just one of those weird, ridiculous ideas actually work out. Not a workout pun. In September, we got another Nintendo Direct, which honestly did not have a lot new this time, but we got Tarrey in Smash, another look at Animal Crossing, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and a new look at the soon-to-be releasing Luigi's Mansion 3, which now looked way better graphically. And when the game released on Halloween of 2019, it looked gorgeous. I think this was a great way to bring back the Luigi's Mansion series. It had such great puzzle design and personality to it, although I have to admit, I don't feel like it left much of an impression on me. Still a fantastic new installment in the Luigi's Mansione series. I just don't really hear anyone talk about this anymore. But soon after that, the holiday season was headlined by the next generation of Pokémon and the first new generation to come to Switch. And Pokémon Sword and Shield were controversial, as Pokémon tends to be on Nintendo Switch. I'm realizing calling Pokémon controversial to anyone who's not in the Nintendo community sounds like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, everything that's going on in the world and you think this is the problem? But nonetheless, Pokemon fans were mad about this more than normal people were. People were a little upset about this one, just because of how clearly rushed the games were. And I definitely felt that, although I think there is a lot to like about these games. Like, really the highlight for me was the aesthetic of having the gym challenges in all of these big stadiums. Like, something just really clicked for me with that, where normally Pokemon is some 10-year-old going on an unsupervised life-changing journey, but now this felt like it gave reason to actually be going to all those gyms and having people care about your journey. This was like sports. This was an annual event. This was something that drew in crowds and had people picking their favorites and cheering along. This was sports. It was fun. Along with that, I also really liked Team Yell in the way that normally the enemy teams are plotting to take over the world or put all Pokemon to extinction, and Team Yell's objective is to just be kind of annoying. But all of that really worked for me. And in addition, I thought the towns were beautifully designed. The architecture and aesthetics of some of these places was beautiful. I really love Balonlea Town. I know the graphics get a lot of hate in this game, and at some points, rightfully so, but they still managed to capture a vibe and a look that I really enjoyed just walking around through. Still, I think it's fair to say that as the first mainline Pokemon games ever on a home console, these games definitely let people down a little bit. It's super disappointing how they were clearly rushed, and even as the biggest media franchise in the entire world, Pokemon Company often doesn't really feel the need to go the extra mile and really make these games great. But for what it's worth, I think if you can put all that context out of your mind and just play this like an average Pokemon game, I think it's still a good experience. As much as I do feel like these games left maybe the smallest impression of any Pokemon generation and really could have been a lot better, this is a great game to run around through. It's got great new Pokemon, an awesome aesthetic. For me, everything just clicked well. Wrapping up the year at the Game Awards, we learned that Nintendo Switch has games.
Nintendo Switch has games.
And that was basically all they had to show there. But then 2020 rolled around and
Turn the TV on. Doesn't matter what channel.
Ryan, look out!
We interrupt this program with breaking news.
Animal Crossing.
Yeah! Animal Crossing New Horizons came out at the perfect time. I mean, obviously this was a very difficult time for the entire world, but for this game to release in March of 2020 and offer what felt like a relaxing island escape at a time where nobody could leave their own homes, something just worked out perfectly here. And clearly, at a time when more people were playing video games than ever, this game really resonated. It took over the world, it felt like, for a little while, at least the entire gaming landscape, and it went on to become the second best-selling game on Switch, which is pretty crazy that it outsold a huge new 3D Mario, 3D Zelda, the ultimate Super Smash Bros., and Animal Crossing outsold them all, and it wasn't even really close. It's only behind Mario Kart 8 Deluxe now, but nobody touches Mario Kart. But this was really the most serendipitous timing that Nintendo could have possibly asked for, and I feel like there's some good karma there where the game was reportedly delayed because they wanted to improve the work-life balance of their workers, and it ends up just releasing at the perfect time anyway, so good on you, Nintendo, I guess. Over time, this game did start to garner some complaints. People were upset that it didn't have all the same features that Animal Crossing New Leaf did at launch, and by the time they added those features in, the hype had mostly died down. But still, I think there was more than enough to do in this game at launch, and while it didn't last forever, I think this was a beautiful moment to be a part of. I mean, honestly, this game fostered some feeling of connection at a moment where it was really needed. Everyone was turning to it at a unanimously difficult time, and I don't think there has been or ever will be another moment where a Nintendo game means this much culturally. But after Animal Crossing came out, Basically everything about the gaming industry had to change this year, including how Nintendo announced games. Gone were the traditional Nintendo Directs. Instead, they started randomly dropping things on Twitter whenever they felt like it. And the first big Twitter reveal turned out to be Paper Mario: The Origami King. And I had a lot of fun with Origami King. I think it looks and sounds great, the art style is amazing, the soundtrack is beautiful, the water is nice. The story can drag a little bit and feel kinda grindy at certain points, but overall I think it's a very solid game. My biggest problem here is actually one that I don't think is unique to this game, though this is exactly where I realized it. And that's that in some of these boss fights, I feel like so much of the fun comes from trying to figure out what's going on and develop and execute that strategy on the fly. But if you die one time, then you just redo the whole thing, cutting out every mistake you made, and suddenly it becomes the easiest thing in the world. There's no way you can possibly lose, but you still have to grind through 10 minutes of predictable bullshit, basically, just to get to the point where you left off. And by that point, it's not fun anymore, because you know you're gonna win. Again, that's not something I think is unique to this game, but I really felt it pretty strongly with the handful of boss fights that I lost on the first go-round. Second and third tries just weren't fun at all. And for the hardcore Paper Mario fans, this wasn't exactly what they were looking for. This is a very good game, but not the biggest crowd pleaser. I should say, it's inaccurate to claim that there were no Nintendo Directs this year. There were 4 Nintendo Direct mini partner showcases, a series that kind of only existed due to the circumstances, but these were nice to have. They mostly focused on third-party reveals though, and didn't nearly reach the same levels of excitement of a typical Nintendo Direct. But if there was one thing that felt close to a real first-party Nintendo Direct, that was the Super Mario Bros. 35th Anniversary Direct. This dropped in September and brought us the reveals of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, Mario 35, which was another wacky online battle royale, this time based around Mario, which was actually a pretty cool idea. Then we saw Super Mario All-Stars coming to SNES Online, and finally we got the reveal of Super Mario 3D All-Stars, dropping in just a couple of weeks. And I remember jumping on buying this game as if it was gonna be some rare limited release, and it really wasn't, but still it was a great way to experience all of these games. I mean, Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy, they're all classics, and it was my first time actually completing all 3 of them. They're all phenomenal. Galaxy worked its way up to being one of my favorite games of all time, and I don't even have the nostalgia that most people who say that have, but I actually 100%ed the game, and that's something I almost never do. If there was any big complaint about this release, it's that they didn't include Galaxy 2, which is a little bit weird, but I mean the 3 games included here, I think more than justify the price tag. This is a great collection. But next on the docket for big Nintendo releases was Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. And what a perfect idea this was. I mean, Breath of the Wild had already set up this world that had been destroyed 100 years prior by hordes of monsters, and now you get to go back and actually be a part of that fight with the Warriors-style gameplay and all the characters from Breath of the Wild. This just made so much sense. It's a perfect fit for this button-mashy, take down as many enemies at once style of gameplay, and a perfect opportunity to play as all of these characters we got to know and love in Breath of the Wild, and actually learn a little bit more about their history. Plus the Divine Beast fights where you get to take these giant machines that we explored in Breath of the Wild and now actually use them and mow down thousands of enemies at once. This was super cool. I'm sure that this game wasn't being planned before the release of Breath of the Wild, but somehow it was the absolute perfect fit. And as my first Warriors game, I enjoyed the combat, although I don't think it 100% clicked for me. It can be a little bit of a grind, but really, I was in it for the story. With how much I loved Breath of the Wild and all of its characters, this was a fantastic opportunity to just live in that world for a little while longer. And more than anything, I was motivated by the cutscenes. I mean, that's something about me in general, is that in any video game I play, I just want to see the cutscenes. If you put a cutscene after doing taxes, I would probably do them. But such a great opportunity to both expand on the characters from Breath of the Wild and give you the opportunity to be a part of that fight. Unfortunately, even though this was promised to be a completely canon telling of the events of the Calamity, it seems like it just wasn't, but still, I really enjoyed the opportunity to just spend a little more time in this world with these characters. And even if I don't have much drive to go back to this game right now, I'm happy it exists. But that was kinda it for 2020. Pokemon Sword and Shield got some DLC, but nothing else huge. It was a bit of a lighter year for Nintendo, and maybe 2020 had something to do with that. But still, even in a slower year that was thrown completely off schedule, there was a decent amount of good stuff to play. Thankfully, at the start of 2021, we found out Nintendo Directs were back. I mean, throughout 2020, there was speculation that there would never be a Direct again because the Twitter reveals were working just fine, and why would they bother making a whole Direct again? But I'm glad that didn't happen, and I think there's good reason for it. I mean, I think all these companies started to realize that you can forego the live presentation, sure, but having a digital Direct that packs in all of your gaming announcements in one place can still be very beneficial. It's something to get your community excited over, and it exposes them all to everything you're putting out instead of just the things that they're interested in. Maybe I'm too much of a sentimental fan, but I think these actually make sense from a business perspective, and they're just fun for us. This Direct in particular, I wouldn't say was the best ever. It felt maybe a little bit slower paced than normal, but it still had some solid reveals. Pyra and Mithra got into Smash, Mario Golf Super Rush was here, DC Superhero Girls, sure. They showed Project Triangle Strategy, which was later creatively renamed Triangle Strategy, and we saw Skyward Sword HD, and closed out with a first look at Splatoon 3. Also in February, though, we saw the release of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. And I had missed out on 3D World on Wii U, so this was my first experience with the game, and it's just so much fun to play. There is more in common with 2D Mario than 3D Mario here, but as long as you know that going in, this is just a classic bread and butter Mario experience, and you can't go wrong. But the more interesting part of this package was Bowser's Fury, because this was something that kind of had no reason to exist, but they just went ahead and did it anyway. It is something completely different from 3D World, and it kind of feels like the real 3D Mario game here. But such a creative repurposing of assets to make something entirely new out of it, and they really went above and beyond here. They did not have to include this. They could have released 3D World for $60, and people would have bought it, but it's really nice to see them go that extra mile when that doesn't always happen with these re-releases. It's a pretty short game, but it's short and sweet, very replayable, and really something I've never seen before from Mario. It did prove to be the last 3D Mario we would get on Switch, which is a little bit surprising, but this was more than enough to tide us over for the next couple of years. A few months later, E3 2021 rolled around, and here we got to see Kazuya in Smash, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, Mario Party Superstars, and then we're hit with a cool, mysterious trailer for Metroid Dread. Again, it's so cool to see Nintendo take at least these trailers in a creepier, darker direction, and this was actually a rumored DS game that had been scrapped and was now finally seeing the light of day on Switch, which was amazing to see that idea brought back and give Metroid fans something to cheer about while they're still waiting for Prime 4. After that, we still got more with WarioWare Get It Together, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Fatal Frame, Maiden of Blackwater, which was really surprising to see come back, but Nintendo owns it, I guess, and wanted to do something with it. Then we got a look at Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope, which looked bigger and better than the last game, and finally, it ended with a new trailer for the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Still no title reveal at this point, but this was the first we saw of exploring the islands in the sky and Link using his brand new abilities, which had people speculating off the wall over what these abilities could possibly be and how the world was going to be different than last time. And that was the last we ever saw of Nintendo at E3. Rest in peace, big guy. This stretch of 2021 did see the release of a lot of games that I never got to play, but I thought looked fun, including new Pokemon Snap, Miitopia, Mario Golf Super Rush, Squidward Sword, and WarioWare Get It Together. There was no shortage of things to play, but people were beginning to notice more than ever the limitations of the Switch hardware, and that had rumors going crazy about the potential release of a Switch Pro. A more powerful Switch system that wouldn't be the successor to Nintendo Switch, but would be a significant step up. And in July of 2021, Nintendo said, kind of. That's right, the Nintendo Switch OLED model was announced with the most robotic name you could possibly give it. I'm still of the belief that this was intended to be a full-on Switch Pro, but due to chip shortages at the time or just Nintendo's changing plans, they had to scrap that and piece this together instead and went, hey, at least it's got a better screen. I do think this model looks nice with the bigger screen and all-white Joy-Cons, but after how much people were hyping up the Switch Pro, this was a little underwhelming. It's not a bad deal if you were really hankering for an improved Nintendo Switch. This at least gave you something, but that's kinda all this is. Something. But still, it was slated for release in October, and soon became the third member of the Switch family. First, though, we got another Nintendo Direct in September, and I'm gonna be honest, I think everything in this Direct was overshadowed by the Mario movie cast reveal. I mean, this moment where they're about to announce the cast, and then just hard cut to a JPEG of Chris Pratt with the word Mario written underneath. I felt like I was losing my mind. This was the hardest I've ever laughed at a Direct. I was watching with a friend, and this is a moment we're never gonna forget. There were a couple other notable trailers here, like for Bayonetta 3 and our first glimpse at Kirby in 3D, but we'd have to wait a little while longer for that. That took us into October though, where, aside from the release of Switch OLED model, we got two games that were pretty big to me. First up is Metroid Dread, and this game kicked my ass. The boss fights in particular were the highlight for me. Incredibly memorable moments, they were so tough, but super satisfying to finally beat. A great new entry for 2D Metroid. I did feel like there were a couple moments that I kind of just had to bomb a random area on the map to progress, and that felt to me like design that we had left behind in the 90s. I didn't really know what that was about. Maybe I was just missing something, but that did feel a little outdated. Still though, an awesome way to bring 2D Metroid to the Switch, and even though I'm not the biggest Metroidvania fan in the world, this game really worked for me. But that very same month had an important moment for me, because this was the moment that Mario Party drinking game was back. Mario Party Superstars kind of feels like people wanted the old Mario Party so badly that they just grabbed a bunch of retro stuff and said, here you go. But that really worked. Generally, this felt like an improvement over Super Mario Party, and gives you exactly what you need from a Mario Party game. There's more conventional controls, a good selection of mini-games, still not a ton of boards here, but what is here is very fun. And honestly, seeing this game come out 3 years after Super Mario Party, it really felt like it bookended my college experience. There's no better way to have a senior year of college than to revamp the Mario Party drinking game. That's what I learned in college, at least. But the final games I want to talk about from 2021 are maybe the worst, best games of the entire generation for me. Because Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were everything I had been looking forward to for years, and they blew it. I mean, Pokémon Diamond was my favorite and most played game by far as a kid. I was so excited by the idea of a brand new Sinnoh remake, and when they finally came out, they were kind of nothing. I mean, I think the art style is cute, there's some great backgrounds here, and I appreciate that they preserved most of the original game, but they really didn't add that much. The most meaningful addition was the Grand Underground, and I just didn't really end up caring about that or feeling like it was an improvement over the Underground we had in Gen 4 in the first place. All I wanted to see was Sinnoh remade in 3D. If you just made these games with Sword and Shield graphics, I would have been so happy. And people hated Sword and Shield graphics. But that's all it would have taken to feel like I'm experiencing some of my favorite childhood games in an all-new, modern, more immersive way. Instead, we got what mostly felt like a one-for-one remake. And I did eventually finish these games, but I felt like I got no more enjoyment than I would have if I just went back and played the originals. But all hope wasn't lost for the Diamond and Pearl fans, because what felt like the real Sinnoh remake was Pokémon Legends Arceus. This game released in January of 2022, and for the first time ever, it felt like we had a fresh take on Pokemon catching and battling. Now, instead of the traditional randomly find a Pokemon and lower their HP so you can catch it in a ball, now you can sneak around this big open world and just start throwing balls at whatever you want. It's not a completely interconnected world, but clearly they were taking steps towards making that big open world Pokemon game that people had been asking for. And just the fact that you could run around, sneak through the tall grass, and try to throw balls at these things without being noticed, that was the most fun part of the game for me. It almost felt like it was gamifying one of the aspects of old Pokemon games that kind of annoyed me, where sometimes I just wouldn't want to battle and would have to run away from every single fight. Now half of the game is trying to avoid battles and catch these things without being seen, and that makes the whole thing a lot more fun. I also love the setting here where it's set in old times and you're just discovering and doing the earliest research on all these Pokemon. Now these research tasks actually give you good reason to go out and catch multiples of the same Pokemon, which is something I never felt motivated to do before. And it also gives you motivation to experiment with your team, change the Pokemon in your lineup, use different moves, because everything that you do counts as a research task, and checking those off the list is so satisfying. Plus, now the different type of Pokeballs you get don't just change the catch rate, but actually change the weight and how far you can throw these balls, which makes it a much more visual and concrete example of how these balls actually affect what you're doing, and that's just a really fun thing to see. This just felt like a super well-rounded game because everything I was doing felt like it actually mattered. Now, instead of just finding my 6 Pokemon and grinding out the rest of the game, I felt really excited about doing different things and exploring. And that's not even mentioning how these games tap into your nostalgia. There's so many great Gen 4 musical and visual references. I think the entire soundtrack is beautiful, and watching Jubilife Village grow into something closer and closer to what we know from Diamond and Pearl, that was just an amazing thing to witness. I also like the post-game here and how you're able to catch all of the legendaries, and I appreciate them not making that too difficult, although it did feel very underwhelming at times. Like, you go up to the NPC and they say, "You know Cresselia?" And you say, "I do." And they say, "It's right back there. Can you catch it?" But still, with these games, it felt like for the first time in a long time, Pokemon was evolving. But just a couple weeks after the release of Legends Arceus, we got our first Nintendo Direct of the year. This one brought us trailers for Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes and Mario Strikers Battle League. Kirby ate a car. We saw Nintendo Switch Sports for a very long time. Then Earthbound and Earthbound Beginnings were revealed to be coming to NSO. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass DLC was announced, and I really think they could have come up with a shorter name for that. And then finally, we saw Xenoblade Chronicles 3. A decent selection of games shown here, but the one I was most excited for dropped just 1 month later with Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And this was super exciting because they actually did it. 3D Kirby was real. And honestly, this is my game of the year from 2022. I just feel like they did everything right. The game translated so well into 3D that it's kind of crazy they had never done this before. But aside from just a fresh take on Kirby gameplay, it had such a cool post-apocalyptic setting. It had abandoned malls with moss and plant life taking them over. It felt like a world that had been destroyed but still was somehow colorful and fun and whimsical and had that Kirby charm to it. It's just a beautiful world to look at, and there's so many rewarding secrets to find. The soundtrack is amazing too, and they introduced mouthful mode where you can inhale large objects and become them, and never in my life have I wanted to become a vending machine. Until now. Everything in this game works well together, and I just think it's kinda epic, I don't know. That game took up most of my time, but the next few months still saw the release of a good amount of games. Nintendo Switch Sports came out, and I think this makes a lot of sense to try and capitalize off the popularity of Wii Sports with a Switch Sports game, but honestly, I don't know why it took this long, or why they replaced the Miis with these stupid-ass, personality-less Xbox 360 avatars. Then Mario Strikers Battle League released, and this was a good series to see come back, although this game was criticized heavily for a lack of content. Then we got Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, which was great to see 3 Houses, a Fire Emblem game I really enjoyed, get the Age of Calamity treatment kind of, and get a Warriors game that expands on its story a little more. But I never got around to this one, and honestly, I never really heard anyone talking about it. No more E3 meant no big Nintendo Direct in June this year, but they did surprisingly bring back the Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase format from 2020, because I guess they had a lot of third-party games coming to Switch, and not enough to show for themselves. But this presentation was highlighted with Persona 3, 4, and 5 coming to Switch, which is a really cool thing, although I feel like it didn't leave nearly the impact it would've had we gotten these a few years earlier. But also this summer, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 got its own Direct, which I watched on a whim, and it kinda sold me. I mean, I still didn't actually buy it, but I think the game looks really good, and if there's any Xenoblade game I wanna play, it's this one. The next big game would come in September with Splatoon 3, and once again, I'm sorry to say that I didn't actually get this game. I guess I felt like one Splatoon on the console was enough for me, but there were some changes here that I liked. I like that there's 3 teams now, and they got this big funny Stingray man. That's kinda all I can say about this one, but if you like Splatoon, I'm sure you'll like it. Also in September was another Nintendo Direct, this one opening with Fire Emblem Engage.
You are a divine dragon, a member of a royal family of dragons revered.
Another Fatal Frame game released in the West for the first time, which is pretty cool to see. Then there was a reveal of Octopath Traveler 2, not a project this time. They brought golf to Nintendo Switch Sports. I feel like they could have done that already. And very notably, this was the reveal of Pikmin 4. People had been waiting ages for this one, and we really didn't get much info, but it was great to see that it's coming. Then finally, we got the name reveal trailer for The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. And this was the 3rd time they ended a Direct with this game now, but it was my most anticipated game of the time, so I was not complaining. October then brought us the release of Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope, and I was super excited for this game. I really enjoyed the first one, and this one just looked bigger and better in every single way. I hopped on there on release day, and I was a little bit disappointed. For some reason, this one just didn't grab me. I don't know if it was the gameplay changes or it just wasn't the right time for me, but for a game that looked grander in every way, it just didn't feel like it. I know it also didn't sell as well because, like a lot of games that came out in 2017, the original got a boost just for being on Switch early when there wasn't a lot else to play, and now there was plenty to play and people had kinda moved on. And that's not necessarily this game's fault, but it's a little unfortunate that this seems to be the end of what will always be one of the most ridiculous collaborations ever conceived. Soon after that, Bayonetta 3 finally released, and then once again, the big holiday titles were new Pokémon games. And once again, people have a lot of opinions on these, but I actually really enjoyed Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. It took me a little while to get into it, but once I did, I was really into it. I mean, I hate being the guy like, bro, after 10 hours it gets good, trust me, but that's honestly kinda how I feel. It's a little bit slow getting going, but once I got my team put together and could move around the world a little bit quicker, I felt like the whole game just opened up. People do complain about graphical glitches and bugs, and that is pretty unacceptable coming from a franchise this big, but in my personal experience, there was nothing that bothered me too much, and really, I had a ton of fun here. I did start playing like 6 weeks after launch though, so maybe I missed the worst of the bugs, but the stuff that I ended up encountering was just kind of funny. It is definitely disappointing how these games were rushed once again, but in spite of that, I felt like the open world Pokemon dream had finally come true, And this was the most fun I had with Pokemon on Switch. It's also the first Pokemon game I ever bought DLC for, and I thought the DLC was great. It had some of the most fun, actually challenging battles in an official Pokemon game, and I really liked that. I guess I have to thank the people that criticized this game though, because it seems to have finally gotten through to Pokemon. For the first time this entire generation, in 2024 we went a year without a major Pokemon release, and I think that only spells good things for the future. Basically, my only problem with Pokemon this generation was that every game was visibly rushed, and I think most things people complain about stem back to that root issue. So with Pokemon finally taking a little bit more time on their next release, I'm hopeful that these games will at least look a little better. That was the end of 2022 though, and 2023 started off with the release of Fire Emblem Engage and a February 8th Nintendo Direct. And some of the biggest headlines here included Metroid Prime Remastered getting shadow dropped the same day. That is something I don't know if we'd ever seen from Nintendo before. Announcing a game that big on the day of its release, I don't know how they pulled this one off, but I think that's the most exciting way you can possibly reveal a game, and it was really amazing to see them actually do it. We would also periodically get announcements for the Mario Kart 8 DLC, including new characters and tracks, and we got that here, and these were really nice to see. It was a little bit reminiscent of the Smash character reveals, where just some DLC updates that we could all constantly be looking forward to and predicting what comes next. Although admittedly, these reveals were a lot less exciting. Then the Direct ended with Tears of the Kingdom for the 4th time, but this was the first we got to see of the crafting and machine building mechanics that were new to this game, and it is amazing that even though this game was the grand finale 4 times, it always felt like there was something new to show. And finally, May brought the release of The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, and I love this game. It was so exciting just to jump back into the same Hyrule from Breath of the Wild, but somehow they made it feel new. Returning to all the old locations and seeing how they had developed in the time between games was so cool, and on top of that, we could explore the entire sky and the depths, which made this game absolutely massive. There were a lot of concerns going into this about them just recycling the same old map from the last game, but there was so much added on here, and on top of that, all the new abilities and the ability to build all of these contraptions, it opened up so many new options for movement and traversing the world that everything felt fresh. You can really see why they had to take their time with this game in order to make all of these abilities actually work correctly, but everything fit together beautifully. It also had some insane story beats that I really did not expect, and the exploration and sense of adventure was still here as strong as ever. It's one of very, very few games that gave me that same spark I felt when I first played Breath of the Wild, and I cherish that feeling in a video game more than anything. That being said, I think I still prefer Breath of the Wild. I mean, with Breath of the Wild, there were so many creative options for tackling any obstacle, and it felt like anything you did, you were always rewarded with some unique interaction. Then Tears of the Kingdom gave you even more creative options, which ended up making every single interaction feel like, I don't know, I could build a rocket. Like, it's great to have all this stuff in the game, but the limitless potential of all of these machines starts to make me feel overwhelmed. Like, yeah, I can build some elaborate, cool machine to tackle this in any way that I want, but I could also just, like, beat them up or something. I just end up feeling a little disappointed in myself for not exploring the most elaborate creative possibilities every time, but sometimes I don't want to spend that time and energy when I can just find a simpler way to do it. I love how many options are here, but there's no tangible reward for doing things in a more interesting way. I know that's kind of on me for not always having the motivation to do this stuff, but I felt like sometimes it just wasn't worthwhile. I feel like Breath of the Wild often rewarded you for finding a way to make a challenge more simple, whereas Tears of the Kingdom often just pushed you to make things more complicated. Still a phenomenal game. I spent over 100 hours here, which is something I rarely do, and it's gotta be a top 10 game of all time for me. I just feel like some of the new additions didn't land perfectly. Anyway, let's talk about Pikmin. Pikmin 4 came out in July, and everything about this game is beautiful. The graphics, the soundtrack, the concept, everything. Playing the demo of this game is actually what sold me on it. It was a great change of pace from Tears of the Kingdom for me, and just being able to bask in that beautiful world for a little while, I knew I needed to get the game. And after I did, sometimes I'd just sit on the title screen and watch the visuals and listen to that music. They really knew how to capture a serene vibe here. But as much as I wanted to, I just couldn't get into it. I mean, make fun of me all you want, but this children's game about throwing colorful guys to move furniture is too hard for me. I just got frustrated. I felt like my Pikmin kept dying, I didn't know where I was going, and I was just making very little progress. Still, I can see how it is satisfying and the game is gorgeous. It just wasn't for me. I still respect and appreciate everything about this game. I guess I'm just not a big Pikmin guy, as much as I wanted to be. But there was still more to look forward to, because that summer's Big Direct brought us a reveal for a Super Mario RPG remake, a new Princess Peach game, WarioWare Move It, and then ended off with the big reveal of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And this was a crazy reveal trailer. 2D Mario was back, and it was actually different now. For how long people complained about the new Super Mario Bros. Series being stale and completely sterile and devoid of personality, this game was full of the most personality you could possibly put in a trailer. The art style was different and more expressive. Some weird shit started going on with all of the stages. Mario turned into an elephant. It felt like Nintendo really waited until they had some new ideas for this series, and finally, they were delivering. And when the game released in October, it was everything it needed to be. An incredible, refreshing take on 2D Mario. People had been begging for so long for them to do something different with this series, and then Wonder comes out, and literally the main hook of this game is what the fuck is going on here. They injected 2D Mario with more life and weirdness than it had ever had before, and it worked beautifully. Just such a breath of fresh air for this series, and it really proved that 2D Mario can still exist in the modern era and feel exciting again. That being said, I don't know if I personally loved this game as much as I wanted to. It's amazing, but all of my favorite memories from 2D Mario came from playing in 4-player co-op, and this game was clearly designed around single player. And largely, that's how it should be. That's how most people are gonna experience the game, and I think that was the right decision. But to me, so much of the fun of co-op took a hit. I mean, you can't interact with each other anymore, there's no more throwing people off of cliffs or jumping off of their head, which was always a great time. And so many of the Wonder mechanics felt like they really only worked for the person the camera latched onto. Everyone else was just left in the dust. Either that, or sometimes I'd just completely miss what was going on, like when these piranha plants come out and start singing, but everybody's just running through and fireballing them. I feel like these were some of the coolest, most fun parts of the game, and I hardly got to experience some of them. Again, I understand why they made the decisions they did. I think this is better for most people, but I was so excited to share this game with my friends, and it felt like it was a lesser experience playing in multiplayer. I still played the heck out of it, but I think multiplayer could have been a lot better. But that was the big holiday game for 2023, alongside Scarlet and Violet DLC. And it is crazy that now, for the second time in the Switch generation, we got big Mario and Zelda games in the same year. That used to feel unheard of, and I don't know if it's gonna be a tradition going forward now, but happening twice in one system's life cycle just goes to show that the Nintendo Switch never stopped giving us games. Or at least, they didn't completely stop. But 2024 is when things really started to slow down for Switch. There was no Nintendo Direct for the first half of the year, and the first big Nintendo release came in late March with Princess Peach Showtime. I actually played the demo for this at the Nintendo New York store, and that was my whole experience with it. I do think it's a little bit of a Coco Melon type game, but it's fine for what it is. Then there was Endless Ocean Luminous, which was a cool return for a kind of niche series, although apparently everybody hates this game, and I don't really know why. I'm not up on my Endless Ocean drama, I'm sorry. But speaking of things returning, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door came back. This happened after there was a big remaster 1000-year door push in the community a few years prior, and there's nothing to suggest that actually made a difference, but personally I think it did. I mean, they skipped over the first game in the series to bring back this one. They did a full-on HD revamp. It looks beautiful, and it's the fan favorite game in the series. It's what everybody was asking for. It's what all the fans wanted, so I don't know, I like to think that they listened here. Still some good games coming out at this point, but by now, the writing was on the wall. The Switch was great, but it was on its last legs. Everyone's sights were getting set on Switch 2. And in casual Nintendo fashion, they randomly dropped a tweet saying, yes, the Switch 2 will be revealed in this fiscal year. And we're having a June Direct that will not mention it. I guess this was something that made a lot of sense to do, because if there was a Direct and they didn't mention Switch 2, without prefacing it like this, people would have been outraged. They needed that Switch 2. So on June 18th, we got what looks to be the final Direct of the Switch's life. And it opened with a reveal trailer for Mario and Luigi Brothership. This was cool to see because it was our first Mario and Luigi game on Switch after their original developer had gone bankrupt. So it's great to know that the series is still alive, and it's looking gorgeous here. A little bit weird to announce yet another Mario RPG after we just got Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario the 1000-Year Door, but hey, I guess this was the first fully original Mario RPG on Switch, so I'm not going to complain about that. Then we got basketball in Nintendo Switch Sports. Again, cool I guess, but why did this take so long? I mean, it's not like this is a game that clearly took a ton of time and effort like Hello Kitty Island Adventure. But they still had a good bit more to show, with Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, Super Mario Party Jamboree, and the reveal of Echoes of Wisdom, the first Zelda game where you play as Zelda. I don't know why such a simple thing as playing as the title character makes this feel more exciting, but it really did, and it was scheduled to release in just a few more months. Rounding things out for the last Direct, though, we finally got to see Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. It's been 8 years! A long wait, but the game looks great, and we can only hope that it was worth it. And considering how late in the Switch's life this Direct was, there was still a good amount of stuff to talk about here. But the next bit of Nintendo announcement buzz came in an unconventional way. On July 10th, 2024, Nintendo uploaded a 10-second video to their YouTube channel titled, "Who is Emio?" And for a few days, the internet lost their minds trying to figure out what this means. And not only was this an unprecedented marketing strategy for Nintendo, but also what were they doing making something that looked genuinely terrifying? A great way to build up a bit of hype and suspense, and a week later, it was revealed to be a new game in the Famicom Detective Club series, which is cool, but a little bit underwhelming. I feel like if they announced a new IP this way, people would have lost their minds. It's still such a brilliant marketing strategy and great for the fans of that series, but I don't know, it didn't feel like something new or exciting. This really makes me want to see them dabble in some more mature horror-type games, though, because if this teaser is any indication, they know how to do horror. The next big game to release, though, was The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom, and finally, playable Zelda was here. It's really interesting to see what they did with the first original 2D Zelda in a long time. Clearly, they were borrowing some of the design philosophy from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and they executed it better than I ever thought they could. I mean, it really feels like they captured that Breath of the Wild DNA and tapped into that same sense of exploration and adventure while opening you up to what feels like limitless possibilities. I also won't spoil, but I feel like one character in particular had the most heartbreaking story I've ever seen in a Nintendo game. I was not expecting that, but I was feeling for him. I thoroughly enjoyed this game, and honestly, I feel like people haven't talked about it enough. It sort of came and went without the fanfare you get for 3D Zelda, but if you liked Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, I think you'll like this. Next on the docket for Nintendo releases was Super Mario Party Jamboree, and aside from having kind of a clunky name, did they need the Super and the Jamboree? It's a really good game. Feels like they were trying to make it like a continuation of the Super Mario Party sub-series, but skipping over Mario Party Superstars, which was not part of the Super Mario Party series. I don't know what they're getting at here, but it's still Mario Party. And as with any good Mario Party, it was the perfect excuse to bring back the Mario Party drinking game. But I'm not just saying this because of the drinking. I think this is probably the best Switch Mario Party. It feels like they took what people liked about the first two Switch Mario Parties and expanded on it, actually giving us a decent number of boards this time, and there's some really good creative new ones as well as some classic retro ones too. Mario Party this generation just kept getting better and better, and finally, they really hit it out of the park. This is the definitive Switch Mario Party. Also coming out was Mario and Luigi Brothership, and this released to mixed reception, but again I'll say it's great to see this series actually still be alive. I got to play the demo for this at the Nintendo Kyoto store, and I had a good time. It was a little bit weird because the employee there was like holding my hand through the whole game when I was just going through the tutorial that already holds your hand, but he was just doing his job, and I still had a good time. I think the battles seem very fun. I've heard mixed things about the story, but this is still a game I really want to play. And that was it for 2024. Pokémon finally took that year off. I hope Pikachu went to the beach or something. And all the Nintendo discourse at this point was about Switch 2. People were waiting all fall, going, this'll be the week. This is when we see Switch 2. There were so many leaks and rumors going around. Nintendo themselves had already confirmed the existence of this thing. All that was left to do was officially reveal it. But it wasn't until January of 2025 that the day finally came. And when this trailer actually got here, it was a little underwhelming. I mean, I felt like the main selling point of this trailer was, it's bigger now, but I'll give them props because the Switch 2 is exactly what we wanted. It's just a bigger, more powerful Switch, and I'm glad they did that, but without any groundbreaking new gimmick, it doesn't quite feel the same. I mean, they kinda were in a lose-lose situation, because if they gave us something out there and different, people would be like, why didn't you just do Switch 2? So instead they did Switch 2, and it's like, well, it's the Switch 2. I'm still so ready for it, and I'm happy they're making exactly this. But man, I miss the feeling I had when I said, holy shit, we in the car! But they're giving us the right follow-up. It's just a little bit more boring of an upgrade, but it's the right thing to do. Nintendo's done all they can with the Switch 1. But now, it's up to us. The Switch 2 is right around the corner. The hype is about to peak. But first, it's time we say goodbye to an old friend. You might be an outdated, underpowered, dying old tablet, but I'll always remember the days you were new and exciting. You created some of my favorite moments from my young adult life, and to me, Nintendo Switch will always be my favorite console. I know it seems silly to get sentimental over the tablet I play Mario on, but it means a little more than that to me, because as much as I remember the build-up to release of this thing, I am now a completely different person than I was back then. But my Switch is still here. As someone who was 17 when the Switch first came out, it felt like the first time I was old enough and aware enough to really follow along for something as silly as the life cycle of a video game console. But it's one of the first hobbies I cared enough about to become a part of a community and follow along every step of the way. And since then, I've been through my last year and a half of high school, the entirety of college, and now it's nearly 3 years since my college graduation. I am really just a whole-ass mid-20s adult. And while I still don't really know what I'm doing in life, and I certainly don't know who I'm gonna be another 8 years from now, if these last 8 years have taught me anything, it's that I'm still gonna be playing Mario. I mean, somehow this console made me feel like I was making real connections. It was there as I was leaving high school and entering college, and it felt like a good way to become closer and stay connected with the friends I was leaving behind, while also opening up a lot of opportunities to connect with people over this thing and make some new friends too. Genuinely, I think it helped me find some of my people and become a little more confident in myself. I mean, I don't want to give Nintendo all the credit for my own personal journey, but the Switch helped me out. I wouldn't be quite the same person or have all the same people in my life without it. And on top of that, it's partially responsible for me getting out there and making some videos. All my first videos were about this thing, and even though I've gone all over the place since then, the Switch has been one of the biggest constants on this channel and in my life. And if you want to see a concrete example of how much I've grown since this thing came out, just go back and watch the earliest videos I made, and then come back here. Actually, don't watch those, never mind. It's a silly little game console that became surprisingly important to me, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So cheers to you, Nintendo Switch. Without you, I might not be drinking Mountain Dew.